to this rhythm. All right. Ezekiel 41 and 42 and Revelation 21. Let me share this page and then we will read. All right. Anybody want to read? You want to read? Amy? Okay. Try to zoom in on this. Okay, you can see that? Okay.
All right. Ezekiel 41 to 42. Then he brought me to the outer sanctuary and measured the jambs. The jambs were 10.5 feet wide on each side. The width of the entrance was 17.5 feet, and the sides of the entrance were 8.75 feet on each side. He measured the length of the outer sanctuary as 70 feet and its width as 35. Then he went into the inner sanctuary and measured the jambs of the entrance at 3.5, the entrance as 10.5, and the width of the entrance is 12.25. Then he measured its length as 35 and its width as 35 before the outer sanctuary. He said to me, "This is the most holy place." Then he measured the wall of the temple as 10.5, and the width of the side chambers as 7, all around the temple. The side chambers were in 3 stories, one above the other, 30 in each story. There were offsets in the wall all around to serve as supports for the side chambers, so that the supports were not in the wall of the temple. The side chambers surrounding the temple were wider at each successive story, for the structure surrounding the temple went up story by story all around the temple. For this reason, the width of the temple increased as it went up, and one went up from the lowest story to the highest by the way of the middle story. I saw that the temple had a raised platform all around. The foundations of the side chambers were a full measuring stick of 10.5. The width of the outer wall of the side chambers was 8.75, and the open area between the side chambers of the temple and the chambers of the court was 35 in width and all around the temple on every side. There were entrances from the side chambers toward the open area, one entrance toward the north and another entrance toward the south. Width of the open area was 8.75 feet all around. The building that was facing the temple courtyard at the west side was 122.5. The wall of the building was 8.75 feet thick all around, and its length 157.5 feet. Then he measured the temple as 175. The courtyard of the temple and the building and its walls was 175. Also the width of the front of the temple and the courtyard on the east as 175. Then he measured the length of the building facing the courtyard at the rear of the temple, with its galleries on either side, as 175. The interior of the outer sanctuary and the porch of the court, as well as the thresholds, narrow windows and galleries all around on 3 sides facing the threshold, were paneled with wood all around. From the ground up to the windows, now the windows were covered, to the space above the entrance, to the inner room and on the outside, and on all the walls in the inner room and outside by measurement, was made with cherubim and decorative palm trees, with a palm tree between each cherub. Each cherub had 2 faces, a human face toward the palm tree on one side and a lion's face toward the palm tree on the other side. They were carved on the whole temple all around. From the ground to the area above the entrance, cherubim and decorative palm trees were carved in the wall of the outer sanctuary. The doorposts of the outer sanctuary were square. In front of the sanctuary, one doorpost looked like the other. The altar was of wood, 5.25 feet high, with its length 3.5 feet. Its corners, its length, and its walls were of wood. He said to me, "This is the table that is before the Lord." The outer sanctuary and the inner sanctuary each had a double door. Each of the doors had 2 swinging leaves, 2 leaves for one door and 2 leaves for the other. On the doors of the outer sanctuary were carved cherubim and palm trees, like those carved on the walls, and there was a canopy of wood on the front of the outside porch. There were narrow windows of decorative palm trees on either side of the side walls of the porch. This is what the side chambers of the temple and the canopies were like. Then he led me out to the outer court toward the north and brought me to the chamber that was opposite the courtyard and opposite the building on the north. Its length was 175 on the north side, and its width was 87.5. Opposite the 35 feet that belonged to the inner court and opposite the pavement that belonged to the outer court, gallery faced gallery in the 3 stories. In front of the chambers was a walkway on the inner side, 17.5 feet wide, at a distance of 1.75 feet. and their entrances were on the north. Now the upper chambers were narrower because the galleries took more space from them than from the lower and middle chambers of the building. For they were in 3 stories and had no pillars like the pillars of the courts. Therefore, the upper chambers were set back from the middle ground more than the lower and middle ones. As for the outer wall by the side of the chambers, toward the outer court facing the chambers, it was 87.5. But the chambers on the outer court were 87.5, while those facing the temple were 175. Below these chambers was a passage on the east side as one enters from the outer court. At the beginning of the wall of the court toward the south, facing the courtyard and the building, were chambers, like those on the north, with a passage in front of them. The chambers that were toward the south were the same length and width as those on the north, and had matching exits and entrances and arrangements. There was an opening at the head of the passage in front of the corresponding wall toward the east when one enters. Then he said to me, the north chambers and the south chambers that face the courtyard are holy chambers where the priests who approach the Lord will eat the most holy offerings. There they will place the most holy offerings, the grain offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering, because the place is holy. When the priests enter, they will not go out from the sanctuary to the outer court without taking off their garments in which they minister, for these are holy. They will put on other garments, then they will go near the places where the people are. Now, when he had finished measuring the interior of the temple, he led me out by the gate that faces east and measured all around. He measured the east side with the measuring stick as 875 by the measuring stick. He measured the north side as 875 feet by the measuring stick. He measured the south side, turned to the west side, measured on all 4 sides, all 875. Had a wall around it, 875 long, 875 wide, to separate the holy and common places. This is why Jeremy studied architecture. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, this is going to be, I mean, I think there are some animation videos that show renderings of what they think, of like trying to imagine this actual vision of like a temple, But we can say that this must have been very sort of elaborate and beautiful, and like just the sense of like, wow, or Ezekiel, as they don't have the temple, right? At that point, the temple is not like they're not in those times, right? They're longing for the restoration of the temple. Right? So yeah, just think about the emotional effect to hear that. I mean, you don't think of that when you're seeing architectural, but you're getting a tour along with this prophet who's seeing this holy, like this presence, this like very like this shrine where God's presence dwells, right? The Garden of Eden restored, So I think that's how that's what it should evoke in us as we think about the beautiful dimensions of that and all these things, and okay. Revelation 21. Maybe I'll take half of it, and then Mom, you want to take half of it?
Okay.
Okay. Revelation 21. Remember, there's been just so much destruction. There's been so much of like this battle of good and evil, and now we're nearing the end. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and earth had ceased to exist, and the sea existed no more. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, made ready like a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, the residence of God is among human beings. He will live among them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will not exist anymore, or mourning, or crying, or pain. For the former things have ceased to exist." The one seated on the throne said, "Look, I am making all things new." Then he said to me, "Write it down, because these words are reliable and true." He also said to me, "It is done. It's finished." I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the one who is thirsty, I will give water, free of charge, from the spring of the water of life. The one who conquers will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. But as for the cowards, unbelievers, detestable persons, murderers, sexually immoral, those who practice magic spells, idol worship, all those who lie, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. That is the second death. Well, actually, I'll pass it off to you.
Okay. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven final plagues came and spoke to me, saying, "Come, I'll show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." So he took me away in the spirit to a huge, majestic mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. The city possesses the glory of God. Its brilliance is like a precious jewel, like a stone of crystal clear jasper. It has a massive high wall with 12 gates, with 12 angels at the gates, and the names of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel are written on the gates. There are 3 gates on the east side, 3 gates on the north side, 3 gates on the south side, and 3 gates on the west side. The wall of the city has 12 foundations, and on them are the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who spoke to me had a golden measuring rod with which to measure the city and its foundation stones and wall. Now, the city is laid out as a square, its length and width the same. He measured the city with a measuring rod at 1,400 miles. Its length and width and height are equal. He also measured its wall, 144 cubits, around according to human measurement, which is also the angels. The city's wall is made of jasper, and the city is pure gold, like transparent glass. The foundations of the city wall are decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation is jasper, the second, sapphire, the third, agate, and the fourth, emerald, the fifth, onyx, the sixth, carnelian, the seventh, chrysolite, the eighth, beryl, the ninth, topaz, the 10th, chrysoprase, the 11th, jacinth, and the 12th, amethyst. And the 12 gates are 12 pearls. Each one of the gates is made from just one pearl. The main street of the city is pure gold, like transparent glass. Now I saw no temple in the city, because the Lord God, the all-powerful, and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, because the glory of God lights it up, and its lamp is the Lamb. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their grandeur into it. Its gates will never be closed during the day, and there will be no night there. They will bring the grandeur and the wealth of the nations into it, but nothing ritually unclean will ever enter into it, nor anyone who does what is detestable or practices falsehood, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life.
Yes.
Mm.
So that's it.
Mm. So those precious stones, were they mentioned in